good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is for you. Hello, my name's Graham Hughes. I'm based in England, and I've worked at MaxQDA for many years now. I actually lost count. But I'm going to talk to you today about comparing and contrasting the smart coding and the creative coding tools, two quite similarly named tools which were introduced a few years ago, I think around MaxQDA 2020 possibly, or possibly earlier than that, I can't remember quite now. But let's have a look. I've got a slide here about when to use smart coding, which I'll return to at the end, but hopefully I'm going to demonstrate these things. But smart coding is very much concerned with the detailed coding of individual coded segments. You use it during the main coding phase of your project, especially if you're working in an inductive way. Probably not so much use in a pure deductive project, but where you're creating new codes and exploring and developing, then you might find the smart coding tool a helpful way of doing it. You can use it to refine detailed codings, to confirm the consistency, to check code. You can also use it even if you're not making any changes. Particularly useful for splitting one code into several more detailed subcodes in particular, or to reassign a code you no longer want to use between several other potential codes and so on. Various uses. But I want to emphasize this tool actually works at the level of individual coded segments. Let's quickly contrast that with creative coding, which works with whole codes. It works with all their segments in one. It's used generally after you've done initial inductive coding work, and when you're ready to reorganize your codes or your coding scheme, quite possibly, as I will demonstrate, to create new groupings of your existing codes, particularly if you want to develop higher level concepts, and that has clear functionality within the grounded theory, and I recommend you to pick up Stefan Redeker's new guide to doing grounded theory with MaxQDA. Doesn't mention creative coding particularly, but you'll see how this could work with that. So I'm now going to go into MaxQDA, and I'm going to work with the English language example project called the Work-Life Balance. It's not perfect, but it does have quite a lot of usable data. I'm going to use the interview part of the document system, where we've got some obvious qualitative interviews, and I'm going to work just with one code. In the current work-life balance group of codes, there's a code called typical workday, where people were asked to describe what does a typical workday look for you. So here on my document browser, I've got the question being asked. First, I'd like to ask you to describe a typical workday. What does a typical workday look like for you? And then I'm going to work with the answers to that. So they've been coded with this typical workday code. We've got 16 coded segments from across the various interviews. Now, I want to work. We could refine the coding for that. You can see here on this one on the screen, as I'm highlighting it, we've got a whole paragraph just coded with typical workday. It's part of some longer coded segments, but there's no detailed coding of the various things that Riley here mentions in the course of answering this particular question. I want to refine the coding by breaking down the typical workday segments and identifying the specific items that people mention. We could do this work. We've been able to do this work for a long time in MaxQDA by putting those segments into the Retrieve Segments panel, by activating the documents that contain them, the interviews, and say activating the typical workday. And now I've got my 16 coded segments down here in the lower part of the screen, and I can move through them. And if I click on one from someone such as Selim, I've got a short answer here following a subsidiary question: what do you do in your free time after work, and so on. I could read these, and I've always been able to click on a bracket down here to put that segment into the document browser and then create and apply codes in the document browser before moving on to the next one. What the smart coding tool allows me to do is to do that in a slightly more efficient way. So let's go to with the codes menu up. I've got my creative coding and smart coding tool functions up here. And I've also got the smart coding tool function on the retrieve segments toolbar. Now, let me just reset my activations and just go through starting the smart coding because there are two ways of doing it. If I start it from the codes menu up here, I've just clicked on it, it will open up a new window. Taking a moment, there we are, which is slightly less than helpful. We've got a blank screen and we've got our entire coding system displayed here. I could select my typical workday from that and I get to see it, but I'm getting quite a lot of information about other codes here. I'm going to close that. If I activate the documents that I want to work with and the code that I want to work with in the old way, so they come into the retrieve segments, now by clicking on the smart coding tool down here, I pull just that information into the smart coding tool window. So I think this is a slightly better way of starting, especially when you're a beginner getting used to it. So now I get a more helpful screen. I've got the 16 typical workday segments. It's saying up here, typical workday, 16 coded segments from 10 documents. I've got them all on one screen where I can see much more information on the one screen than I could in the old display in the retrieve segments window. And I've got just the relevant part of my code system displaying over here. So now I can immerse myself in this particular topic, the typical workday, and start to think more smartly about what are the people saying, and I can create and apply codes to parts of segments or whole segments within this working screen. So if I read the first one, I've just highlighted it, but with one click. Matteo talks through his day very much in terms of the times of work. I have an early class. I have another English student in the afternoon class, and I might have evening classes and so on. So Matteo is talking about his work. By right-clicking, having selected this segment, by right-clicking, I get a small context menu, and I can create and assign a new code directly from here. So I'm going to create a code for working times. So up comes the new code dialog. So I'm just put in working times, and I can use the color of the parent code or choose color and click OK. And that code has been created, added to my code system over here on the left-hand side as a subcode of typical workday, and it has been attached to this segment as is displayed up here. Now, that's not the only thing I can do here. He also talks about having some free time. I have the middle of the day free. I don't want to code the whole segment to that because it's only a little bit of it. So another way that I can create a new code is by coming over here and clicking on the little plus under the typical workday to create a new subcode of typical workday, which I'm going to call free time. Again, I won't worry about color. Click OK, and that just creates the free time code. Nothing has been attached to it yet. But if I want to pick out part of this segment and attach it to it, double click. The row is still highlighted in blue, but now that this has gone white, it means that I can highlight and drag in the usual way to highlight a part where he talks about having part of the day free. So now I'm ready to attach the free time code to that segment by dragging it in the usual way and dropping it on the code over there. And free time has now been added to this one. So I can add codes to the whole segment or parts of segments. Let's come down to Riley. And Riley, the first thing Riley does is he gets a coffee. So let's create a new code for food and drink. You'll soon get into the hang of creating the new codes that way. and double click and say first and most importantly, I get a coffee, of course. So let's click, highlight that, drag that and drop that on the food and drink one. Does he have some free time? Well, let's just say at some time it's time to go home. I'm going to add that to the free time segment. So I've got two codes here, food and drink and free time, and click on the next one. Now, if I were to click on free time in this codes margin, MaxQDA will display, I think I was expecting it to display the free time for both. Not quite sure why that isn't coming up. Okay. Slightly unexpected effect. As I go on, you see what I can do. If I click over here on a code like free time, the screen does change and highlights or displays just the segments which are attached to that new code, free time. And if I click on working times, I get this. And the code's margin in the other here shows any other codes which are attached to the segment, excluding the one that I'm currently displaying. Now, this, you've got to think about this a little bit. I selected working times over here. So working times are the segments which are being displayed here, and any other codes, any other activated codes are the ones that are displayed over here on the right. If I go back to typical workday, I get all 16 segments, and you can see the 4 coded segments that I have already attached down there. So other things that you can do, if I right click on a segment down here, Riley paragraph 5, and get that, I could uncode it. I've got the option to remove the code from typical workday from this segment. If I click on this, this paragraph will disappear and we'll go down from 16 to 15 segments. I'm just going to remove it. Click OK, and Riley paragraph 5 has gone. We've gone down to 15 coded segments. So you can uncode something from the main code header in that way if you decide that it's wrong. I'm going to put it back again because it wasn't wrong, but I was just wanting to demonstrate that. If I change my mind about one of these over here, say this food and drink, highlight that. No, it was the free time one. Let's click on the free time one. That was a bit more. Quite sure why it's not showing me this free time down here. Okay, I'll look at this one, free time up here. If I click on that red X, I can unattach the free time code from that Matteo segment. Click on that, and the free time has gone back down to 1, and it's disappeared from there. So I can change my mind about the codings here. I can add more codes, and I can move things around and so on. I think, let me close that down now because I've about come to the limit of what's reasonable to display there. I'm going to go and I'm going to open a another version of the same data, but with lots of work done now. So I've got the same set of interviews, and now look at my typical workday, and I've got many more. There's the same 16 segments. We're going to have lots of other coded segments. Let's reopen that with the smart coding. Actually, if I go to the codes menu, with the activations in place, the smart coding tool should load. This is the other way of starting it from the codes menu. It gives me all of the codes, but if I now click on the only activated codes, I get to a useful screen display, which is showing me just for my activated documents, just the typical workday and all the extra subcodes that I did in the blink of an eye while changing projects. And you can see now lots of other ones. Let's see if that free time code, it's not displaying in that particular one, but it is displaying it across others. Free time, there are 9 coded segments. Let me scroll down and we should see. It's not working properly this morning or this afternoon or whatever time of day it is for you. Never mind. Try work times. That one is working within the screen. Now we're seeing it. For some reason, that free time MaxQDA is taken against it. Here I've highlighted the work times code, and within this screen, I can see how it fits as partial segments across lots of the other ones. Click in the white space to come away, click on a different code. Let me click on the work times down there, and I can display them all consistently, just the work time codes excluded from any other data. So two different ways of displaying them. So now I can move about looking at different codes, and now you can see how you can use this smart coding tool for checking, confirming that you have applied your codes consistently. So I'm on the shopping code, so every one of the data segments here should have things about shopping. Do a bit of shopping, go to the supermarket, buying food, and so on, all in those segments. So that, in essence, is the smart coding tool. If I want to check, let's come back to the typical workday. I might be reading something, I see something that isn't anything to do with a typical workday, but I want to make sure that it too has been coded correctly with some other codes. I can temporarily remove the only activated codes. I not only see the full coding system displayed here in the left-hand panel, but any other codes that are not activated are also displayed in their black color, not the red color. So things like childcare is a code that we have elsewhere in the coding system under unpaid labor, and so I can see that yes, a reference to childcare within this segment has been coded elsewhere. Still having a little bit of trouble with that display the segments. So I can go anywhere in my data system and display all of the ones there, and that way around it is working. To see I'm in childcare, and I can see the references to children coded under the typical workday references. So let's close that smart coding tool and just deactivate. But that is how I can refine a single code for typical workday, just a structural code, and identify lots and lots of subcode topics. Go back to my PowerPoint and smart coding. So refine detailed codings, confirm the consistency of meaning. I was briefly demonstrated that with the shopping code. Split a code into several more detailed codes. That was the main exercise that I've just done with the typical workday code. Reassign a code you no longer want. In that case, what you actually do is delete the code assignments as you move them to other things, so that eventually you end up with an empty code, which you can then delete. I didn't actually demonstrate that, but check with the help manual and you'll find out how to do that in your system. That is all working at the level of individual coded segments. Now I'm going to move to creative coding, and this is at a higher level where we want to reorganize the coding scheme. I come back into my project where I've got these extra codes under the current work-life balance, the typical workday. I've got a whole load of codes here. Now, I've always been able to reorganize these by dragging them around. I could take my typical workday. Some of these do indeed concern work, so I could click on typical workday, and I could create a new code as a subcode of it and call it work. Let's give it a green color, say, and click OK. And then I could take any segment here, say meetings, and I could make meetings a subcode of work. And I could come down to other things, work described, and make that a subcode of work, or just at the level below meetings and so on. I've always been able to do that. The creative coding tool gives me a better way of doing that. I'm just going to undo those couple of steps to get back to where I was. Now I'm going to show you how to do it, the same sort of thing, but using the creative coding tool. On my codes menu, I will start with the creative coding tool. And it says it's come up with a max map type interface, and it's asking me to drag all the codes I want to organize into this area. And when I've ready to start organizing them, I've got a start organizing codes button. It's grayed out at the moment because I've got nothing to organize. I could drag in individual codes like this and organize them that way. That's not what I want to do. So I just want to remove those. So if I made a mistake, I can remove ones from the map by right-clicking and removing from the map. There used to be a tool on the top for doing that, but it's disappeared. Better to drag in the whole group. I've dragged the typical workday, and that comes in with all of its subcodes. This is all the work I want to now work on, thinking about some higher level codes where I can group these various topics together. So this is all the data I want to work with. I'm ready to start organizing codes, and the Start Organizing Codes button is now highlighting up here. There have been some changes to this since in the last update. We used to have a color panel appearing at the left. That has gone away now, and I've got a bigger working screen, and we deal with code colors through a tool on the toolbar up here. Now, I'm in a typical Max map at the moment, and I can move things around. If I move my typical workday code up to get a bit of space, and I can move these various other ones down and around as much as I want, and so on. What I want to do now is add some new codes for those higher level topics, because I'm seeing that there are things about family, and there are things about work. I'm going to put the work things over on this side, and I'm going to put things like children, work times can go over here, and shopping. I think that's to do with got to be a little careful picking some of these things up. Housework, that's to do with family. And then I've got things, personal things like meditation, and relax and showering, and studying, travel and commuting. I think I'm going to put that to work times. Food and drink. Let's have food and drink over here. Free time, that's me time. Bring that over here. Meetings. I'm just getting some exercise. That's where they're close together, it can sometimes be difficult to pick one up. There we are, I've got it. Work at home, I think that's part of work. Friends, they're not part of work. So I've created some rough groups. Now I'm ready to create some new codes. This is you can see why this is called creative. I'm going to have a new code, which I'm going to call work. You saw me create that before. I won't worry with color at the moment. It appears in the top left. I can drag it down and put it roughly above my various work codes. I'm going to have another new code, which I'm going to call personal. And okay, it appears at the top left, and I'm going to put that sort of here in the middle. And then we're going to have another new code, which I'm going to call domestic for the home life things. Okay, and put that over the home ones. Now I'm ready to create links, and this is the a crucial step of this tool. I've got a link button here, which is a mode button. When I click on this, I move into linking mode, where I can draw lines between them. At the moment, not in linking mode, I can move things around. You see me do a lot of that. I go into linking mode, that's just slightly grayed out. Now I can't move, but if I drag from work, I get an arrow, and if I come down and put it onto the computer, I've created a link between work and computer. This is actually creating a subcode relationship, and because there's a golden rule in MaxQDA that a code can only be a subcode of one other code. There's a saying in English, no man can serve two masters, and it applies here, no code can have two header codes. So as soon as I made computer a subcode of work, it ceased to be a direct subcode of typical workday. So now quickly, I can create those subcode relationships with each of the other things in this section. You have to drag until the highlight comes around both. When I'm dragging, no relationship yet, there, the highlight, and now the arrow goes to there, and I want work at home, highlight, and work at home. So that's created a little group. Those are now all linked to work. Let's now do the same with personal, if we can. Oh, I'm not in link mode at the moment. I just want to pick up this personal. If I can, I'm getting the arrows rather than the code, unfortunately, which is making it a bit difficult for me to. Okay, I've got to just do a little bit of work down here, move some of these out of the way. Then I can get the personal, move that slightly out of the way there. Right, put these back where they were. So now I go back into link mode, and now I can connect each of these quickly in turn. And you get to see how you can actually work quite quickly. A little bit of organization, moving them around first, and I've got all of those linked to personal. Come out of link mode, and I can move that around to a more sensible place. The domestic ones, these should work. So quickly back into link mode, drag domestic onto friends, domestic onto housework, domestic onto shopping, domestic onto children. Oh no, actually, friends doesn't work that way. Right click on that, and I can. No, I don't want to remove. Oh yes. Right click on the arrow, and I can remove the arrow from the map. Friends is more something different, more at the same level as the work, personal, and domestic. So when I'm not in link mode, I can move these things around. I can now tidy the map up if I want to make things look clear and neat. I've got various tools. I could if I create a box around all of those and use the align tool, I can align them across on the middle so that they're all neatly on the same line, things like that. So I want to make my map look nice, but this is purely cosmetic. I need to create more connections between the typical workday and these higher level codes. So I go back into link mode, and I now draw links between these. Wait till the highlight appears, and then you created the links. So now I've got a new structure. I've quickly, in a very creative way, reorganized my codes. If I select a code like the work, I come out of link mode, select the work code, I can now choose its color from this color tool. So if I select, let's say, a bright green color for code, I get an extra option box. Do I want to change color for subcodes? And I think that can be quite a useful tool. So I say yes, and all the work codes get the same color. Come on to personal, let's choose a different color. Let's go for red, and yes, make all of those red, and we'll leave the other colors as they are. So various things now come into play. I've got my ideas, I've displayed them on this map interface, and so on. I'm now ready to quit my creative coding session and look carefully at the dialogue that comes up when I hit that quit button. We got this is a very serious dialogue, so pay close attention. The question is, do I want to apply the code structure to your code, my code system? The process is non-reversible. The creative coding map will be saved as a regular Max map. So I've got a map here, which whatever I do, it's going to be stored in Max Maps. But do I want to apply this new code structure to my code system in a non-reversible process? I've got 3 buttons, yes, no, and cancel. Why 3? Cancel means, oh, I didn't mean to hit creative coding. I meant to hit new code, and I'm not ready to leave. Cancel will stop this in its tracks and come back. I can carry on working. I just demonstrated hitting cancel. Let's do it again. So yes and no. If I hit yes, my code system will be altered to show the new structure in the code system window. If I click on no, no change will be made in the code system, but the map itself will be stored in Max Maps, because whatever happens, it'll be stored as a possible set of ideas of one way I might choose to reorganize my code system. So I might be exploring in a very inductive way, and I'm not yet ready to make these changes irrevocable. That's where I might have a creative coding session, and towards the end, I decide, not absolutely sure. I'm going to say no, just store it, but don't change anything yet. If I then decide I do want to do it, I'm going to have to repeat that work. I can't just pick up the map and turn it automatically into another session. I will have to do the rearranging. But second time around, it comes much easier and I can do it quicker. For today, I'm going to say yes. The map will close in a moment. And my new coding scheme structure is now visible at the top of the code system. When you finish a creative coding session, the codes that you've been working on all go to the top of the code system. If that's not where you want them to stay, then you might find it useful just to minimize the subgroups. Whoops. Here we are. Domestic, friends, personal, and work. And now I can drag that typical workday and put it back into its position as a subcode of the typical workday and enlarge them again. Note the colors have come across. So I made work this bright green. You can see some of them in the code margin there. So I have that coding structure now over here. I know the program said the changes were irreversible, but I think you'll find if you look at the undo function here, hover over here, I can undo the quit creative coding system one, and I possibly could restore the situation before. I don't want to go through with that. Let me just briefly go to the visual tools, open up Max Maps, and there is my creative coding session map, the one I just created. You can see it there. So I can send it off to a QTT worksheet. I could take a copy of it. I could export it if I wanted to include it in a project, in a report and things like that. Let me just come back and do another session. I'm nearly finished my presentation here. I'm going to start another creative coding session. I'm going to drag my structure in. It will bring in 2 levels of codes. So I can come back to where I was. They're in a different order now because it's sorted them alphabetically, I think you'll find. But I can move these things around and so on. Let me just demonstrate a couple more things and then I'll take your questions. At any stage, if I do a right click on a code, I can have an overview of its coded segments. So I can read over here in the preview, or by clicking on them, I can read the full segments. I can quickly remind myself of the detailed data that is behind each one of these codes. So I can have the overview of the coded segments from there. I can do other things. I can review the code memos and so on. I can also, within this, merge 2 codes. Say I wanted just to merge showering with exercise. If I drag showering and drop it onto exercise like that, when I quit, I believe those 2 will be merged into one. Let's quit. Oh, I know I isn't doing it because I haven't started organizing codes. Missed a step. So still within the organizing codes, I can see the overview of coded segments. But now, if I drag showering and drop it on exercise, it says merge codes. And I get a yes, no possibility. Yes, it would put those 2 into one, say no, and I can move showering back again. I don't have to go through with it. I have got an undo function within my creative coding as well. So I'm going to quit that creative coding session. I didn't change anything, so this time I'm going to say no. I get an extra dialogue. An extra map will be created, but no changes will be applied. I can say continue, and that ends that creative coding session. So now have I got any questions? Let me scroll up quickly and see. Lots of greetings. Handouts will be available to you. Matthew says, what are my thoughts on using creative coding as a tool for brainstorming? Well, yes, in a sense, yes, especially if when you quit, you simply save it as a map and you don't put any changes through. Those last two tools that I showed you, where you can view the coded segments, the overview of coded segments for each one, would be particularly valuable if you're brainstorming, you're looking for inspiration for some higher level codes, especially if you've been working in a very grounded approach and you haven't got any hierarchical structure in your coding system as yet. All your codes are at the same level, and you're thinking, can I group some of these together because they have a lot of commonalities? You might use the smart coding tool to compare. From pure grounded approach, you sometimes have the problem that you create 2 or 3 codes with very similar names and titles covering very similar topics. And you might want to use the smart coding tool to decide, should those all actually merge into one single code, or is there enough difference between them to reorganize them so that they are clearly distinct? But once you got over that level, the brainstorming that Matthew is asking about, yes, I think the creative coding could work well for that. Matthew again. Can I explain the use of the comments in the smart coding tool? Okay, let me just, these are, yes, there was a reference to it. So let me activate the typical workday and all of its subcodes, and we'll go into a smart coding session using the tool from the toolbar, having activated the data that I want. It will come up. My computer's running a little bit slow, possibly because of all the hop-in stuff. Right, let's have only activated codes. Now, I haven't actually got any comments as yet, but if I select a coded segment, say, let me click on the exercise ones, Tan here mentions dance classes, which I've coded as exercise. So I could click into the in here, right click. Now, how can I add comments? I wanted to, oh yes, just double click in the comments. Double click here, mentions dancing is this exercise? Little question to myself. So that is a comment on just the coding segment, for just this coding segment within the context of the dancing code. It's also coded to free time. So let me open up the free time group and find Tan. The comment isn't there, okay, because it's not attached to that segment. It is only attached to the exercise segment with Tan. If I close this and find the Tan interview, and there is the segment there, the coded comment is visible here. Mentions dancing is this exercise. If I open up the right-hand margin, I can also see the coded comment. So those comments are the classic coding segment comments that we've had available for a long, long time. They are just displayed in the smart coding because clearly they can be very helpful in working at reassigning codes and so on. Sam asks, where do I find my Max maps? They're in the Visual Tools menu, Sam. The left-hand end of the Visual Tools opens up all of the Max maps. Lots of other functions in there as well. Amy asks, where does it get stored? I'm not quite sure what you mean by it there, Amy. If you're referring to the map, it's stored in the Max maps for the creative coding. Any of the changes in the smart coding that you make are stored within the code system, the document system, the document browser. They are central to the whole MaxQDA project, all of that. Please ask again if you want more specific than that. Myung Kim, creative coding. What if a subcode can be linked into multiple codes? How do I show such relationships? Is there a workaround? Aha, the golden rule that a subcode can only be related, be a subcode of one header code. I think, Myung, you really get into memos for this. That would be my solution for you. I would create a new free memo, quite possibly, which has a title which refers to the various linkings that you're concerned with here, because in a memo, you can link codes, multiple codes, to one memo. So all of those subcodes that you think share some linkage, by creating a memo to describe that linkage and then linking all of those codes to that memo, you can then evidence that relationship. That's the workaround that I would suggest. Not really part of creative coding, but let's help if we can. Macy or Machid, I'm not sure how to pronounce you, Talaga. Say I finished a creative coded session and decided against changing the code system. In the end, click no, and the session was saved as a map. Can I later open the map and use it to introduce changes in the code system? Simple answer here, I'm afraid, is no. You might want to open the map, possibly print it off, and then have it at your elbow while you do the next a new creative coding session and have it there reminding you what you wanted to do. Or you might store the map on if you've got two screens, you might just copy it, move it onto another screen, have it open there. But no, you cannot go from a Max map and alter the project directly. I think creative coding is the one tool where a map can actually alter the underlying structure of your project. But from direct Max maps, you can't. So something else I forgot to mention while I was doing this, let me just come back to my creative coding. I'm just going to remove the, so let's start that session again and start organizing the codes. Now, you've got at any stage during your creative coding session, you've got the opportunity to save an intermediate map as a Max map, or to copy the display or export it. So if you want to illustrate very thoroughly in your report multiple stages of your thinking during a single creative coding session, you don't only have to store an end map, you can create intermediate stage maps showing your thinking at different stages along the way, all within one creative coding session. You don't have to terminate the session until you've really finished all the work that you want to do with that, but that is certainly possible. Maya asking about the comments. Can you see an overview of the comments? Yes, the comments have always been available. I'm just going to click no, I'm not changing it, continue. Comments on coded segments. Let me just activate the documents and my personal, because I know I created one there. In my old-fashioned retrieve segments, if I open up the preferences and go to switch to table view for my retrieve segments. So now I've got all those retrieve segments in this table. By scrolling down, the comment field is the first one. And there we are. There's the comment you saw me add, mentions dancing, is this exercise. So I can get an overview of lots of comments. I don't know if I've got comments in any other codes, but they would display if they existed. So that is how you can see an overview of your comments. If the code is created, so Carolina, if the code is created by searching Word with autocode, can I rerun such searches for new added documents? I think, yes, that's some way off the topic that I was working here. There is a search tool within the smart coding window, which I didn't particularly mention, but yes, you can always rerun searches when you add further documents, and MaxQDA won't duplicate the application of the auto coding if a segment is already coded with a particular thematic code and an auto code finds it again. It won't add it a second time. It just ignores it. Kelly, I didn't feel that search and autocode function was really part of this. I wanted to show the special tools of the smart coding and so on. So I'm going to skip that because we're right on the end of the session. Anything else? This Kim again. When two codes are merged, what will the label look like? You get the label of the surviving code, the one that I dropped onto, I think, on the map. We've always been able to merge codes in the code system window. Let me just highlight this. Take my showering. If I take showering and right click, I can move its coded segments by clicking on move coded segments, and then click on the exercise code was where I was going to put it. Right click there and paste coded segments from showering. If I go through with that, move the coded segments. Okay, showering had 2 and exercise had 5. Now exercise has 7 and showering has none. So the exercise remains the label, and showering becomes a code. I might now delete it. And I'm going to undo that to put them back to where they were. I wasn't quite happy to go through with that. And if you want to do that a bit, Kim, I suggest use the example project, create a little creative coding session and play around with it and explore the consequences, not on your live data. Hannah is asking, can we customize the thickness of the link depending on the frequency of the mention of the words or concepts in the creative coding? Golly, let me just activate these again, open up my creative coding session one more time, bring in the typical workday, start organizing the codes, and select a link. I can choose whether or not to display the code frequencies. I can choose whether or not to display the symbols. I'm not finding an easy way to format the links. I can click on it, click on link in link mode. I don't get the format. I'm not sure, Hannah, that I can actually make the arrows in this be related to the number of frequency of things in there, and I'm as to individual words within that. I'm not seeing. I don't think I can do that in the creative coding. We really should be bringing this to an end because the next sessions are going to be starting in 12 minutes time. So I don't mind if you want to leave, but I'm just going to keep talking for a moment. Leah is asking about the difference between using comments and memos. Fundamentally, Leah, a comment is attached to just one coded segment and the code that it has been applied with. If that segment is also coded with 2 or 3 other codes, the comment doesn't appear related to those. So a comment is a very, very specific thing, very detailed. It just relates to one coded segment and a particular code attached to that. A memo can be something much more general. It doesn't have to relate to any codes at all. In document memos, memos written within a document don't have to be related to codes. It can be very useful to write memos on ideas that are a little bit uncertain and you're not sure whether they're really worth putting into a code and that sort of thing. So memos are much broader and have lots of other uses. Comments are very, very specific. Christina is asking, can we combine 2 codes into one code? I'm not thinking about creating subcodes. Yes, that's the merging that I did demonstrate, moving showering onto exercise. in two different ways. I showed it within the creative coding map, and also I moved its coding segments just a few moments ago in the code system window and pasted them into the exercise code. So yes, you can combine two codes into one code, simplifying your coding system. Very, very necessary. You can also do that within the smart coding, one segment at a time, if you want to think about those merges more segment by segment. Various people asking about this merging, Ayesha as well. I hope I've covered that. Kingsley, what's the major difference between memos and comments? Okay, I hope I've covered that. Can you use both in coding and are both displayed? Yes, they are both displayed. Making no changes here. So coming back to here, this margin tab can display, if I right-click on the, or sorry, right-click in the window, I can choose whether I want to show memos and comments, just memos, or memos and paraphrases. I've got various options here. Not a good idea to have paraphrases as well, memos and comments. And I can't remember who has some memos. Let me go and look at the memo manager for in-document memos. And who's Riley has got lots of in-document memos. Great. Okay, so if I open up the Riley document, now here we are in this right-hand margin, and let me move my retrieve segments down. We've got various, and they come with different colors, I think you'll find. I think this flexible hours is a coded segment comment, the blue color, and it's linked with these solid things in the coding brackets, whereas the yellow color is for the memo, whose symbol is over there. Double click here and I should be able to open up that memo. There we are. That is the in-document memo. I can edit this. Another fundamental difference, there is no limit to the length of a memo, whereas a comment on a coded segment is much more like a tweet. It does have a limit of something like 120 characters. Not sure if that's absolutely right, but there is an absolute limit in terms of the number of characters, and it's not huge. So you can't write a thesis in a comment, but you could write a thesis in a memo. Kingsley, how can I use smart coding tool to display the parent code so all subcodes can be in one table? Okay, now I hope you mean smart code and not the creative coding, because we've talked about parent codes quite a lot within the creative coding function. Let me just come back and open up the smart coding on all of this. Here comes the smart coding. So I've opened up the smart coding on my project after my creative coding session, and I've saved the changes. So I've got these groups of work and personal and domestic, and you can see that structure here in the smart coding window. You can see the subcode relationships that I created in the creative coding session. So hopefully, Kingsley, you can see that now. Hopefully that's answering your question. Ray Ambrosi, I have a series of codes I used for many documents, blah, blah, blah. I often need to assign these to specific countries. What is the best way to find all codes relevant to a country? Do I have to add both the country code and emissions reduction code to each segment in order to find emissions? I think, Ray, what you really need to do here is use your variables part of your MaxQDA project, because I'm guessing that your documents, each document comes from a single country. I think it's unlikely that the documents you're working with relate to multiple countries. So in the variables part of your project, come to the variables menu, you can create multiple variables for your various documents. In this example project, we've got things like the number of children, whether they're married or their civil status, things like their age, and so on. And if I look at the here, I can see the values for those variables across these interviews. Here we are. We've got their employment status, employed or self-employed, their age, and so on. You can store values like the country, a single value for each document, what is the country assigned to it, and then by activating those countries or using the mixed methods tool, the cross tab, you can create tables of your variables across the countries. Completely off the topic of creative and smart coding, but hopefully that will help you along the way. Maya, you can use both, but the overview of comments and memos. Oh, Maya's answering the question, I think. But actually, Maya, I did show you can see the comments in the document browser as well. You can't see the memos in the retrieve segments display that I've got down here. The memos don't get displayed down here because they are not specific to the coded segments. Retrieve segments is everything relating to just coded segments, and memos are independent. So this memo up here, memo 49, if I click on it, it's attached to a segment here, which is not coded as a coded segment. It's just a little piece of data that memo has been attached to.